The frozen knock the night was colder than usual. Even for the edge of Earth's last outpost, winds howled like ghosts through the empty forest. Snowflakes fell quietly, and everything was still. Inside a small wooden bunker, an old man named Harvin sat by the fire, sipping hot broth. He hadn't spoken to another living soul in months. And that was just how he liked it. But on that night, something changed. A soft knock echoed through the heavy steel door, so quiet it almost got lost in the wind. Harvin froze, listening, thinking it might be a tree branch or the wind playing tricks. Then the knock came again, barely there. But desperate, he stood slowly, his joints creaking as much as the old wood floor beneath him, with cautious steps. He walked to the door and peeked through the small viewing hole. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Outside stood a figure, hunched and trembling, holding something wrapped in cloth. Snow clung to her hair, silver blue and long like threads of ice. Her skin was pale violet, her eyes glowing softly in the dark. She was not human. The child in her arms looked smaller than a year old. Teet's tiny face was almost buried under the wrappings, unmoving. Harvin's hand hovered over the door's control panel. He knew the law. Aliens weren't allowed on Earth's protected zones, especially not refugees, but something in her face so full of pain, fear, and something deeper stopped him from turning away. He opened the door, just slightly, just enough to speak. The icy wind rushed in, biting his skin. "What do you want?" he asked, not unkindly. The alien mother fell to her knees immediately. Holding the bundle out, "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Just take her." "Not me, just her." Harvin blinked, stunned. She was offering him her child. Not asking for shelter, not asking for warmth, just begging him to save the baby. She looked like she didn't expect to live another minute. Her arms trembled from cold, her lips turning blue. "Get in," Harvin said suddenly, pulling the door open wide. The alien's eyes widened. "No. No, I can't. They'll come for me, just her. Let her live." But Harvin didn't argue. He grabbed her arm and pulled both of them inside, slamming the door shut behind them. Alarms blinked red. Warning about unauthorized life forms, but he ignored it. The warmth of the bunker hit the mother like a wave. She nearly collapsed, still clinging to her child. Harvin gently took the bundle from her arms and unwrapped it just a bit. The child was breathing, barely but breathing. He placed the bundle near the fire and brought a thick blanket, wrapping both mother and child together. For a while, no one spoke. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside, inside. Silence and heat wrapped around them like safety. Harvin sat nearby, watching her. She looked so weak, too thin. Her skin marked with bruises and scars. But she was still holding herself with quiet strength. She didn't beg, didn't speak again. Only looked at her baby with tears in her glowing eyes. After a long time, Harvin finally asked, "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Selah," and hers. "Ami," she said, almost smiling. "Her name is Ami." Harvin nodded, not sure what to say next. He brought her a bowl of broth. Unsure if her kind could eat it, she took it with trembling hands and sipped slowly every time she moved. She glanced at the door, as if expecting it to burst open with soldiers, or worse, "Who's after you?" Harvin asked, voice low. Selah didn't answer. Her arms tightened around the child. She stared at the flames and said nothing. The old man didn't push. He knew what fear looked like. He had seen it during the war back, when Earth still fought. For its survival, he saw it now, in the eyes of a mother who had nothing left but her child. Harvin sat back, watching both of them slowly warm up. Part of him whispered that he was a fool. Helping an alien could get him arrested or, worse, killed. But another part, a deeper part that hadn't stirred in years, felt alive again. He wasn't just keeping warm anymore. he was keeping someone else alive. Outside, the wind screamed louder, as if the darkness itself was angry he had opened his door. But inside, for the first time in a long time, someone other than Harvan breathed inside that quiet little bunker. And the story had only just begun. The fire snapped and hissed inside the bunker. Steam rose from the pot Harvan had placed over it. It's filled with thick broth and some root vegetables he'd managed to grow last season. He glanced at the two figures resting near the warmth, Sela curled protectively around her child. Ami, they had both fallen asleep, bodies twitching from cold memories and fear even in their dreams. Harvan sat quietly, sharpening his old hunting knife, his eyes not leaving them for long. He didn't trust Izali, not anymore. But something about the way Sela had pleaded at his door, that raw desperation, had hit him hard. It wasn't a trap. It wasn't a scam. It was just a mother willing to die if her child could live. The scanner near the wall blinked red again. It detected non-human biosignatures inside. A warning message flashed across the small screen. Unauthorized life-form detected report immediately. Harvan scoffed and tapped the screen until it dimmed. He wasn't going to report anything. Not after what he'd seen in the wars. Not after what humans had done to aliens and what aliens had done to humans. Hate didn't save anyone, just created more graves. A soft cough made him turn. Sela had woken up, blinking slowly as she looked around the room when her eyes met Harvan's. She tensed, reaching for her child. "She's fine," Harvan said gently, motioning toward the fire. "Still breathing, still warm." Sela stared for a moment, then nodded once. "Thank you," she whispered, voice hoarse. Harvan stood and walked to the pot, poured some broth into a metal cup, and handed it to her. "Eat while it's hot," he said. "You'll need your strength if we're going to talk." She took the cup with shaking hands, sipping carefully. The warmth made her winds too hot for her raw throat, but she didn't stop. Harvan sat across from her, his eyes steady. "Why were you out there?" he asked, "with a baby? In the middle of a blizzard?" Sela didn't answer at first. She looked down at Ami still asleep in the thick blankets. Then she looked back at Harvan, her voice breaking. "They would have taken her." "If I stayed, who?" Harvan asked. "My own people," she replied, her jaw tightening. "The overseers, the enforcers. Whatever you call them now." She held the cup close to her chest, like a shield. "They found out I helped humans during the last purge, gave medicine, hid some wounded. They said I betrayed the cause." Harvan's eyes narrowed. "Where's your mate?" he asked carefully. "Dead," she said without blinking. By my hand, the fire cracked loudly between them. But neither moved. Harvan didn't ask why. He could already guess. Was he going to hurt the child? "Yes," she said simply. "He said half-bloods weaken the next generation." Harvan leaned back in his chair, letting out a slow breath. This was bigger than just a runaway mother. Sela wasn't just trying to survive. She had made enemies in high places. "Do they know you're here?" "No," she whispered. "But they will, eventually. They always find us." Her hand brushed gently over Ami's tiny forehead. "I can keep running, but she won't survive another freeze like that." For a long moment, Harvan didn't speak. He remembered when his own daughter had fallen sick during the biowars. He had no meds, no help, and no one came when he called. She had died in his arms, just like this child nearly had in hers. "I have supplies," he finally said, voice firm. "I have weapons too. If they come, we'll fight." Sela looked up sharply, her eyes wide. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk that for us?" Harvan stood slowly, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a faded photograph. He handed it to her, a picture of a young girl with bright eyes and hair full of ribbons. "She died because no one helped," he said. "I'm not going to be that kind of man again." Sela held the photo gently, the paper worn soft over time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. and she meant it. Harvin nodded, taking the photo back. "Sorry doesn't change the past," he said, "but maybe saving you two can change something else." A soft gurgle came from the blanket Sammy was. Waking up, her tiny arms reached for her mother, and Selah quickly gathered her close. The child blinked at Harvin, confused but calm. Then, slowly, she reached a hand toward him, her fingers glowing faintly. Harvin froze, unsure what the gesture meant. Selah smiled softly for the first time. "She likes you," she said. "It means she feels safe." Harvin didn't know what to say. He reached out and gently touched the child's hand. It was warm now, not icy, not dying. For the first time in years, his bunker didn't feel so empty. And outside, the storm still howled, but inside, the humans' fire burned brighter than ever. The next morning, Harvin stepped outside to clear the snow piled up against the bunker door. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and the wind still carried a bitter chill. But something in him felt lighter. Inside, two lives were breathing, because he had said yes. As he shoveled the icy crust, he paused, staring at strange prints half buried in the snow. Too smooth, too wide. Not from any earth animal. He crouched and touched the edge, still fresh. Someone or something had passed by not long ago. He glanced up at the trees, their twisted branches still and silent. Then he returned inside. Quickly, bolting the door behind him, Selah stood near the heating unit, cradling Ami with one arm while heating a cloth in the other. She was learning the bunker's layout fast, like someone who had been on the run too long. Her eyes met his the moment he entered. "You saw them," she said softly, not as a question, but as a truth she already knew. Harvin nodded. Tracks. In the snow, not human. She closed her eyes briefly, as if confirming something she had feared but hoped wasn't real. "They found us," she whispered. "They always do." Harvin pulled his coat off, tossing it onto the chair. Then, "It's time you told me everything," he said firmly. "No more hiding the truth." Selah nodded slowly and sat down, wrapping Ami tighter in the blanket. "My people are called the Valari," she began. "We came from the second moon of Farian Prime, once known for healers and songweavers, not warriors, but during the war, everything changed." Harvin sat opposite her, listening carefully. "We were told that humans were monsters, that your kind destroyed without mercy," she said. "I believed it. Until I saw the camps." She paused, her eyes darkening. "They weren't camps, they were cages. I was part of a medical wing assigned to monitor Earth captives. But what I saw?" She shook her head. "They were starving, broken, treated like animals. Children died while we looked away." Harvin's jaw clenched. "I tried to speak out," Selah continued. "I smuggled food, shared medicine, but that was seen as betrayal. They came for me in the night." "The council guards, were you already carrying Ami?" Harvin asked quietly. "Yes," Selah said, her voice trembling. "She was born while I was in hiding. I named her after an old Earth song. She's half human." That stunned Harvin. He looked at the child, now resting peacefully, unaware of the storm her very bloodline invited, and her father. He asked carefully. "Gone," Selah whispered. "He saved us once, years ago. But he never escaped the camp." Harvin stared at the fire, emotions churning beneath his skin. "So now they want to erase everything connected to that shame," he said bitterly. Selah nodded. "They call her a stain, a danger to purity. They don't see her as a baby, only a symbol to destroy." The room grew quiet, except for the low crackle of the fire. Then the alarm blinked a faint blip on the scanner screen. One, then two lifeforms, approaching from the north tree line. Harvin stood instantly and motioned for Selah. "Go to the cellar. Take the child," he ordered. Without a word, she moved fast, pulling up the hidden hatch near the pantry floor and disappearing below. Harvin grabbed his old rifle from the rack, rusted but still deadly. He loaded it while walking to the narrow window slit near the door. Two shadows moved through the trees. Dark armor glinting slightly under the faint daylight. They were tall, silent, and scanning everything with devices attached to their arms. Valerie hunters, not the kind that captured, but the kind that erased. One of them knelt, examining the snow, then turned toward the bunker. Harvin ducked behind the wall, heart pounding, but hands steady. He didn't know how long the door would hold if they tried to force their way in. But he knew one thing: he would not give up that child. They knocked, not softly this time, but loud, demanding. Harvin stepped to the door's COM panel and activated the voice mic. "This is private property," he said firmly. "You've got no right here." A cold, metallic voice replied, "We seek a fugitive, a Velari female, and an illegal hybrid infant. Have you seen them?" Harvin stared at the speaker, then said, "Only snow and wind." The silence stretched a little too long. Then the voice returned, "If we search and find lies, you will be marked for harboring fugitives." Harvin smiled bitterly. "I've been marked before," he said, and turned off the mic. Then he quietly loaded another round into his rifle. They didn't try to break in, not yet, but Harvin knew this was only the beginning. They would return with more, and they would not knock next time. As he walked back to the cellar hatch, he opened it and looked down. Selah sat in the shadows, cradling Ami, her eyes waiting for the worst. "They'll come again," Harvin said, "but next time I'll be ready." And for the first time, Selah didn't look afraid. She looked ready too. The sun never really rose in that part of the forest. It just shifted from black to gray, as if the sky had forgotten how to shine. Harvin didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat beside the door, his rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the scanner that blinked every few seconds. Down below, Selah held her child close, curled up on a cot in the hidden cellar. They didn't speak much now, not because there was nothing to say, but because silence felt safer. It was the silence of prey hiding from wolves. The morning air was tense, thick like smoke before a fire. The scanner blipped once, then again, faster. Harvin stood and moved to the viewing slit. Dark shapes emerged through the fog, tall and armored in black matte suits that shimmered like wet stone. 3 Velari soldiers, fully geared, moved toward the bunker. One carried a heat sensor pack. On his back, another held a long blade pulsing with light. They moved with discipline, not like raiders or outlaws. This was official. A voice came through the outside speaker, deep and sharp. "Human occupant, this is a priority inspection. You are ordered to open your door and submit for search." Harvin didn't move. Instead, he pressed the mic button slowly and replied, "You have no jurisdiction here. This land is outside your zone, and you know it." There was a pause. Then a second voice joined in, female, more commanding, "Open the door, old man, or we'll make you regret it." Harvin narrowed his eyes. He recognized that voice Commander Varex, one of the worst from the war. Known for wiping out entire villages that dared hide the wounded, he stood tall and spoke calmly. "You're not here for inspection," he said. "You're here to finish a job that should never have started. You're afraid of a baby." The silence that followed was short. Then, without warning, a loud thud slammed against the door. Not a knock, a test. They were checking how strong it was. Harvin moved to the generator panel and flipped a switch. The outside sensors activated the perimeter field. Nothing lethal, but enough to burn if touched. A loud zap sounded, followed by a grunt of pain. "I warned you," Harvin said, gripping his rifle down below. Selah listened with her heart racing. She kissed Ami's forehead and whispered words in her own language, soft promises of safety she hoped she could keep. Outside, the Velari stepped back, their scanners lighting up. One of them raised a long device and began scanning the walls inside. Harvin's monitor beeped again, heartbeat readings. Life forms detected. They knew someone else was in there. Commander. Varric spoke again, her voice colder now. We know you're hiding her. She is property of the Valerie High Order. Turn her over, and we'll spare your life. Harvin's hand tightened around the rifle. He pressed the mic button once more and said, She's not property. She's a mother, and that child is more innocent than anyone you serve. You want them, you come through me. There was no reply, but the next moment, 2 loud blasts hit the side of the bunker, non-lethal charges meant to weaken the walls. The building shook, dust falling from the beams above. Ami let out a soft cry below, and Selah held her tighter. Harvin opened a hidden drawer in the wall and pulled out a small case. Inside were 6 small pulse mines, his last line of defense. He quickly attached them to the entry corridor, each set to proximity. Then he took position behind the reinforced shelf and waited. The final knock never came, just the loud crash of the front door being blasted inward. 3 Vaylari entered with swift, smooth motion, but as soon as the first stepped into the hallway, 1 mine triggered. A sharp pulse of energy knocked the soldier off his feet, armor sizzling. Harvin didn't hesitate. He fired 2 precise shots. One hit a shoulder plate, the other grazed a leg. They scrambled for cover, shouting commands in their native tongue. It was chaos brief, sharp, and loud. Harvin moved with surprising speed for an old man. Ducking between barriers, he aimed not to kill, but to delay, to make them think twice. 1 soldier reached the door to the cellar, but Harvin saw him just in time. He fired a warning shot, so close it sparked off the wall near the soldier's head. Take 1 more step, Harvin growled, and I swear I'll bury you in this. Bunker, the intruders backed off, their mission no longer clean or simple. Commander Varric's voice came once more, but this time over a private link direct to Harvin. You've made a mistake, she said, cold and certain. Now, you're a traitor too. Harvin answered with 1 word before cutting the channel. Good. The Valar retreated for now, but Harvin knew they would return. He closed the broken door as best he could and went to the cellar. When he opened the hatch, Selah was already standing Ami in her arms. Are you hurt? She asked quickly. No, Harvin replied, breathing hard, but next time we'll need help. She stepped up and looked him in the eyes. Then we'll fight together, she said. This time, I won't run. And for the first time, Harvin saw what she really was, not just a refugee, but a warrior, a mother willing to stand between death and her child. And now, so is he. The smell of scorched metal lingered in the bunker for hours. Harvin worked silently, sealing the blasted door with scrap plates and locking bolts. His hands were steady, but his thoughts raced. He had fought off soldiers, again real ones, with orders and tech far beyond his old-world tools. He wasn't a soldier anymore. But something inside him had snapped back into place, like an old gear that still fit when the engine roared. Down in the cellar, Selah paced with Ami in her arms. The child had fallen asleep again, but her breathing was fast, her tiny fingers twitching. The fight upstairs had left more than smoke, it left tension, fear, and one clear truth. Running wasn't an option anymore when Harvin returned downstairs. He spoke before she could. They'll come again. With more men and less patience, Selah nodded, not looking up. I know, she said, her voice distant. And I'm tired of running. She sat down gently, placing Ami in the cot, then turned to face him. I was trained once. Before I became a nurse, she admitted, every Vaylari goes through basic combat. Harvin raised an eyebrow. And here I thought you were just good with soup and silence, he said dryly. A small smile touched her lips. Just for a second. We can't win a full fight, she said. But we don't have to. We just need to make it too costly for them to keep coming. Harvin opened a metal chest in the corner, pulling out a dusty black device. It looked like a rusty toaster, but it buzzed when he touched the panel. Signal booster. He explained, I used to link with old resistance bands. I still know a few who owe me favors. Sayla leaned forward. You'd really call them for. U.S. Harvin's gaze was steady. For Ami, he said, she didn't ask for this, but I'll give her a chance anyway. He activated the device, tuning through static and dead frequencies. Then, finally click. A light blinked green. The channel was open. He leaned in and said one word. Echo. There was a pause. Then a voice crackled back. Low and cautious. Who's calling on the old bones?
Oven.
He replied. It's time I cashed in those old debts. The voice paused, then said, You alive, you crazy bastard? Harvin smirked. Barely, but I've got something worth protecting. Need eyes, shields, and maybe one of those railguns, if you've got one rusting around. The voice went silent for a long time, then answered, You're on the edge. Of Sector 12, right? Kie? Harvin said. All right, the voice returned. You've got 48 hours. Then we drop. Be ready. Harvin shut off the signal. His face serious again. They're coming, he told Sayla. She nodded. Gripping the edge of the table, then so are we, she said. And this time? I won't be hiding in a cellar. They spent the next day preparing. Harvin taught her how to use his makeshift traps pressure plates made from mining scraps. Flash mines disguised as stone bricks, and even a remote EMP he'd built during his loneliest years. She picked up fast, her hands steady and her focus sharp at night. They trained in the narrow hallway. He handed her a stun baton. And she showed him a few Valerie combat moves, fluid, dance-like, but with the power to drop a man cold. You're faster than I expected, he muttered, after she dodged his fake strike. And you hit harder than a crashed shuttle, she replied, smiling faintly in the quiet hours. They took turns sleeping, one always awake. Ami started warming to the space, crawling a little, babbling soft sounds. She reached for Harvin's beard once and giggled. He froze at first, then let out a soft chuckle, rough, but real, looks. Like she thinks I'm part animal, he said. She likes animals, Sayla whispered, her voice full of something like peace. But peace didn't last. At sunrise, a low hum echoed through the trees outside. Harvin stepped outside and saw them 3 sleek Valari ships hovering low, scanning the ground. They're mapping us, he said grimly. They're building a route. Sayla looked through the window and whispered, They're not waiting anymore. We need to finish our setup by nightfall. That evening, they placed traps, reinforced the walls, and installed motion beacons around the clearing. Sayla set the last beacon near a tree stump and stood still, eyes scanning the sky. Harvin walked over and asked, Second thoughts? She shook her head. No, she said. Just wondering if this is where it ends, where it begins. He looked at her, then at Ami, playing quietly in the warm bunker. If it ends here, he said, then we end it standing and together. Under the dim gray sky, they made the decision. Not to run, not to beg, but to fight. Not just for survival, but for a future that child deserved. Asterix night came early. The forest fell into silence, not peaceful, but tense, as if every tree was holding its breath. Harvin and Sayla stood in the dark near the bunker's edge, hidden beneath a camouflage net made of heat-dampening fabric. Above them, the sky rippled with movement. Faint shadows of Valari. Scout drones drifting like silent vultures. Harvin tapped his earpiece and whispered, They're closing in, 30 meters, west tree line, Sayla, crouched beside a sensor beacon, replied calmly. I've got eyes on 2/3 ones cloaked, inside the bunker. Ami slept in a small hollow lined with blankets and insulation. Her soft breath was the only sound there. She didn't know a battle was coming. Didn't know her mother and a human stranger were about to risk everything for her. Harvin watched through his scope as 3 figures stepped into the clearing. Black armor, no lights, weapons drawn. They moved with precision, checking their scans, heading straight toward the bunker. He pressed the detonator. A sharp crack rang out as the first trap exploded, just a flash mine. But enough to blind them for 6 seconds. Sayla didn't wait. She launched from her hiding spot. Moving like a ghost, her baton crackled as it slammed into one soldier's chest. Short-circuiting his gear, the other 2 staggered, caught between. Disorientation and training, Harvin took the shot non-lethal rounds, aimed at joints. One soldier dropped hard. Groaning, the other ducked for cover behind a tree. But that was just the start. Above them, a sharp shriek cut through the air. Valari transport ships descending fast. Not scouts dropships, carrying full units. They're not here to take us, Harvin muttered. They're here to wipe us out. Sayla rolled behind a rock, panting. Then we don't let them, she said, eyes burning with fire. Harvin ran back toward the bunker entrance, flipping a switch hidden beneath the steps. Steel plates slid over the windows. Magnetic seals locking into place. It became a fortress, just like he had built it for, all those lonely years ago, inside. Red lights blinked, motion detected at all sides. They were surrounded. Harvin tossed Sayla a small EMP charge. Use it if they breach the hallway, he said. She nodded and moved to the south corridor, while he took the north end. Then, everything exploded into motion. A loud boom shook the ground blast charges deployed by the Valari soldiers. The front door cracked under pressure but held. 2 soldiers began cutting through with plasma blades, while another team tried digging through the sidewall. Harvin triggered the outer mine's electric arcs, danced across the snow, frying one attacker and forcing the others to scatter. But they were too many, even with traps. This wasn't going to be a clean defense. Sayla engaged another soldier in close quarters, dodging a blade swing and driving her stun stick straight into his ribs. The armor sparked, and the soldier fell twitching. Another lunged at her, but this time she wasn't fast enough. The blade scraped her side, burning through her suit. She cried out and dropped to one knee, but held her ground. Harvin saw her fall and opened fire. The attacker dropped with a thud. Sayla, he shouted, running over. She waved him off, blood on her lips, but still breathing. I'm fine, she gasped. Help her go check on Ami. He didn't argue. He raced to the rear room, checking the hatch. Ami was still asleep, safe, for now. But above, the roof shuddered. A laser cutter had started carving through it, sparks raining down. Harvin climbed to the upper level, threw open a hatch, and stepped into the open air. A small team was descending from ropes. He grabbed his old pulse, launcher heavy, slow but reliable. One shot, boom, the platform burst mid-air, dropping the team before they even hit the ground. Behind him, a soft hum rose. Resistance ships, small but fast, zipped through the sky 2, maybe 3. Then a voice crackled in his earpiece. Echoed team inbound, said the familiar voice from earlier. Bunker 12, light your beacon. Harvin grabbed the flare and launched it high. A blue flash lit the sky above the forest, a sign that allies were on the ground. The battle shifted quickly. Resistance fighters poured in from the north, engaging the Valieri troops with precision. What was once a hopeless standoff became a battlefield of equals. Inside the bunker, Sayla stood again, bruised and bloody but alive. She watched from the hallway as Harvin and 3 resistance fighters cleared the final wave. The last Valari ship took off, retreating under heavy fire. Then silence. Real silence. Not the silence of fear, but of something sacred. Survival. Harvin dropped to one knee, breathing hard. Sayla walked over, steadying him with one arm. You all right, old man? She whispered. I've been worse, he replied, half smiling through the pain. Then, Soft sound came from the rear chamber Ami had woken. She crawled toward them, confused but unharmed, her glowing eyes blinking as if wondering what all the noise had been. Harvin reached out and picked her up. She clung to his coat with tiny fingers, pressing her face into his shoulder. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the scars, not the smoke, just the fact that they were still standing. The fight had ended, but their story was far from over. The snow melted slowly. Days passed since the battle. But the forest still felt bruised. Charred trees stood like broken teeth, and bits of metal and armor lay buried beneath the mud. But inside the bunker, warmth had returned not just from the fire, but from something deeper. Harvin stood outside, leaning on his old rifle like a cane, watching the tree line. Not for enemies anymore, but for peace. For once, the scanner lights were quiet. The alarms silent. Behind him, laughter echoed softly. Ami was crawling across the wooden floor inside, giggling as Sayla tried to catch her. Her small hands clapped. Her feet kicked in joy. She didn't remember the battle, the storm, or the fearingly warmth, food, and the two people who never left her side. Sayla stepped outside with a blanket over her shoulders. Her movements slower but strong. The wound on her side was healing, and her eyes had changed. They no longer held just fear, they held pride. "You're awake early," she said softly. Standing beside Harvin, "Couldn't sleep," he replied. "Too quiet, that's a good thing." She smiled. For now, he nodded. They stood in silence, side by side, looking at the trees without speaking. Then, Sayla turned to him. Her voice serious. "You saved us," she said, not just once, but over and over. Harvin didn't answer right away. He just stared at the snow melting off the roof, water dripping in steady rhythm. "You gave me something to protect again," he finally said, "and that gave me a reason to live inside." The bunker Ami let out a loud squeal, banging a wooden spoon on a metal bowl. Sayla chuckled, shaking her head. "She thinks she's the commander now." Harvin smirked. "She won the war, didn't she?" Later that day, the Resistance transport returned cleanup crew. Supplies, medical kits. A woman stepped out first, Captain Mora. The voice from the comes. She shook Harvin's hand with firm respect. "You were outnumbered and outgunned," she said, "but you held your ground." Harvin glanced at Sayla and replied, "I didn't do it alone." Mora turned to Sayla with narrowed eyes, not unfriendly, but cautious. "You sure about staying here?" She asked. "We can get you off-world, maybe to one of the quiet colonies." Sayla shook her head without hesitation. "No," she said. "This is home now." Mora raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She handed Harvin a datapad. "We've updated your records," she said. "Officially, the girl is your dependent now. No more scans. No more red flags. She's protected under human law." Harvin stared at the datapad, speechless. Sayla stepped closer, her hand resting on his shoulder. "You're her guardian," she whispered. "You're her father now." He looked at the child crawling on the floor, her glowing eyes bright and curious. His chest tightened, not from pain, but something warmer. Hope. That night, they shared a quiet dinner. The fire crackled gently, and Ami sat between them, chewing on a soft piece of fruit. No alarms, no gunfire, no fear, just three people sitting like a family. "Do you think they'll come back?" Sayla asked quietly. "Maybe," Harvin answered, "but next time, we won't be alone." She nodded. "We'll be ready," she said. "All of us." Ami suddenly reached for Harvin's hand, her fingers wrapping tightly around his weathered ones. He looked down at her, stunned. She gave a sleepy smile and mumbled, "Papa." The word landed like thunder in his chest. Sayla's eyes filled with quiet tears as she watched him freeze. He didn't speak. He just picked up the child and held her close. She snuggled into his chest and closed her eyes, safe and warm. They were not bound by blood, not tied by law or race, but they were something stronger, a family born from fire. Forged in fear and sealed in love outside. The wind blew softly across the clearing, no longer screaming, just whispering, as if the world itself knew that something had changed here. Not the ending of a story, but the beginning of a new one where a human opened his door and chose to never close it again.